Today, we're talking about that dynamic we often refer to as front versus back. And this is a super important topic to discuss. I'm not going to just tiptoe through the tulips today. We're really going to get into the thick of it. And here's the thing, I've been in the veterinary industry for over 30 years, and this crap is still going on. It's been going on the entire time. It's still a problem, and I've had it. So, by the way, my name is Casey Ellenwood, RVT, founder of VetSnoot. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe and comment on this with any of the issues that you're facing. Hopefully, we can all help each other, because what goes on here is this divide is such a common problem that's rarely about personality conflicts. It's usually a result of stress, lack of visibility into everybody's workload, treating each other with respect, and poor leadership modeling. A lot of times we end up with unresolved resentment that just kind of becomes normalized over time. So here's the thing, culture is not created by your mission statements and your posters on the wall and your pizza parties. Who cares? It's created by what leadership consistently allows, reinforces, ignores, or models. And you might be thinking, well, I'm not in a leadership position and I'm in a toxic work environment. Okay, yeah, maybe you are, but you're always in a position where you have some sort of control over something. And for you, it might just be how you operate and what you perceive and how you handle your own self. But to be honest, so many of us are in leadership positions, and I'm going to get into that in a minute, and we just don't even realize it. But a different spin on this video that you probably weren't expecting is that I'm going to focus on the CSR perspective, because many times the front desk is just kind of considered they're on their own, in their own area, on a different planet or whatever. And we're going to today talk about how clients view us as a team and our own self-reflection, what our particular role is when it comes to team culture, and how we can create a system to communicate between departments, set boundaries, and define what urgency means in our practice. So let's get to it. Front versus back should never be a part of culture. The moment a hospital starts identifying as two separate groups, everything suffers, everybody suffers. Our clients and our patients experience the entire hospital as one team, and that's how we should be experiencing it as well, because the division just creates resentment and people are making assumptions and communication breakdowns all the way around. And here's the thing, if you really stop and think about relationships and everything in life in general, not just the workplace, when there's an issue, it typically revolves around miscommunication or a communication breakdown. Now, the front desk and the treatment area, yes, they are totally different roles. They require different skill sets, but they are not opposing teams. Now I'm going to go back to leadership. Leadership sets the tone. And I said earlier, you might be feeling like, well, there's nothing I can do here. I'm going to address that in a second. But keep in mind that leadership isn't just the practice owner and the practice manager or the office manager. Sometimes we have people who are in leadership positions as maybe a lead CSR or a lead technician, or you're just a leader in a small group, whatever it might be. If you're training someone else, if you've been here one day longer than the person in front of you, you're in a leadership position in some way, shape, or form, whether you believe it or not. So we all need to be acting like leaders. But keep in mind, team members watch how doctors and managers speak about other departments. So if they openly criticize or are dismissive, or they interrupt team members disrespectfully, then others are going to learn that behavior, and they're just going to think, oh, well, this is how we do it here. This is acceptable. So culture spreads by observation. Okay. So what leadership tolerates eventually becomes the standard. Now, the CSR reality, it's crazy up there because there's constant interruptions, and it creates what I consider to be cognitive overload. And this is a huge point that many medical teams miss. A lot of our technicians, assistants, and doctors genuinely do not understand what it's like if they haven't already worked at the front desk. Our CSRs are balancing phone lines, clients in the lobby, welcoming them into the practice, getting them checked in, processing a payment. There's just so many things that they're doing. But meanwhile, they're also managing distressed, fearful, or angry pet owners while they're maybe clinically phone triaging a case that for urgency and all of these things on the fly. Okay. So just because someone is sitting at a computer doesn't mean they're automatically available and at your beck and call. That's what I call the screen illusion. So we all need to be respectful of each other because we all need to understand our role, how important it is, and everyone else's role and how important they are to the practice. I work with a lot of practices, and when they're experiencing an issue, so many times the problem is actually a system failure or a gap in the system, or they just didn't have a system in place to begin with. So I talk a lot about systems because if we don't have clear expectations and our pathway of communication is not well defined, that's when we have chaos, attitude, all the things. So we need to make sure the team knows what qualifies as an urgent interruption and what is the workflow for an interruption. Okay. And we're going to go through that today. We want to make sure that everybody is trained on interdepartment communication because a lot of perceived attitude problems are actually a workflow problem or unclear priorities or just being disrespectful and allowing it to happen. So many conflicts stem from that lack of definition over what constitutes an urgent interruption and who's going to handle it. So these pathways are going to be defined today. Here's what happens when we aren't cross-trained or we don't understand what workflow is for another department. We oftentimes interrupt, and a lot of times we don't realize that we're even interrupting something because we don't know what it's like to work in that department. So if anybody can interrupt anyone at any time for anything, cognitive fatigue and resentment are guaranteed. So we're going to define some things. Remember, respect goes both ways. Okay, so medical team, yes, we are under a lot of pressure. There's patients that can decline rapidly. You might walk into the treatment area and see there's two technicians doing a nail trim and think, oh, they're just doing a toenail trim. Well, they're actually really thinking and focusing on what they're doing. Someone restraining is really staying focused and exerting a lot of energy. And the person doing the toenail trim is also focusing on what they're doing. And doctors are overloaded. You never know what they're trying to be thinking of all at the same time. So just making sure you understand these treatment areas are very chaotic. It goes both ways. The front desk, again, I've talked about this earlier. It's crazy up there too. So stress does not excuse disrespect. Okay. So it doesn't make it okay to misbehave and act like a brat just because you're stressed out. I don't care who you are. So urgency and disrespect are not the same thing. So what we're going to do is remember what our role is. Let's do some self-reflection, and all of us need to do this. I don't care what your position is, who you are, who you think you are. You need to do some self-reflection on what kind of coworker you become when things get bad, because that defines our culture. Hospitality, good hospitality happens when the environment isn't perfect. How we handle ourselves when things are crazy is who defines who we really are and how resilient we are and how much of a team player we are. So a lot of us are carrying emotional baggage. Some of us are frustrated, exhausted. We're feeling some resentment. I'm probably making so many of you angry right now. And it's not that I'm trying to trigger you. It's just that you have feelings that are like PTSD that are coming about because this topic is such a problem for you. And I understand where you're coming from because you probably feel like you have no authority to change anything. So what's going to help you is balancing, acknowledging that there's a problem with the system and that there's not a system in place, and trying to implement the system and practical ways that you can manage yourself instead of saying, well, I wish somebody would fix this. I wish management would do their job. Instead, I want you to ask, Who do I become when things get hard, when there is a difficult environment? And I want you to shift from helpless observer to active participant. And what you can do is not absorb toxic crap and just say, oh, it's just vet med. No, that's bullshit. Okay. So stress is maybe can explain behavior, but it doesn't permanently excuse it. So if you are feeling like you're in a toxic environment and you think, oh, well, this is just how it is, and now you're part of the problem, then you need to understand and self-reflect right now, because it doesn't help the situation for you to just say, oh, well, they're behaving badly, so I'm just going to act like this. That's where it just becomes a vicious cycle. So grow up, do some self-reflecting, and let's move on. So back to the front desk, it's a balancing act when you're managing the front desk, right? You want to be helpful to your doctors and to your nurses and your assistants, but you also need to protect your focus so you don't make a mistake. And you've got a lot of tasks that you're doing. So the key is that you're going to acknowledge when someone comes up to you and interrupts or needs something from you, and you're doing something, even if it doesn't look like you're doing something, regardless. The key is to acknowledge their presence first and then give them some sort of a timeline. So we're going to shift the tone from you're interrupting me to I see you and I'm going to help you as soon as I can. So we're going to acknowledge their presence, address the urgency, give a timeline, and protect your focus to avoid mistakes. And here are some ways to do that. I'm going to ask you to treat your medical team with the same level of customer service that you would give a client. And this is a great way to keep workplace culture positive, to keep yourself positive, and to just not be a jerk. It naturally removes any hint of defensiveness. So I have some examples here. I like to just start out with like, I want to help you. That's how I start with my clients. Sure, I can help you with that. I'm happy to take care of that for you. Do you mind if I handle it the second I finish up with this email? Or whatever, insert the blank. I can definitely take care of that for you. Leave it right here with me and I'm going to dive into it as soon as I finish, fill in the blank. Now, we sometimes have urgent issues, and dropping everything for an urgent case is just the nature of medicine. We're in a hospital, so there's going to be situations where things don't go perfectly, and we need to understand when something's urgent, and we need to be able to just drop what we're doing and do what needs to happen, okay? So the problem here is the client doesn't know what's happening behind the scenes. And it can feel like maybe they're being ignored. And so we want to make sure that we're communicating with them. So the key here is to be clear, to be confident, and to be reassuring. You want to convey that there's a priority, right? Something's come up. We're not causing a panic, but we also aren't going to make them feel unimportant. So I have some ways here, examples of how you can frame it up depending on the situation. I am so sorry. We have an emergency. I need to assist with it right away. If you'll excuse me for a moment, I'll be right back to finish helping you. An urgent case just came through. It needs my immediate help. I'm going to step away for just a moment. I'll be right back to take care of you. Thank you so much for your patience. It's really not hard. Shoot, I'm a big attention to detail person, and I just noticed I missed a quotation mark. Sorry about that. Bummer. Now, when the medical team has a request and they have maybe an urgent request or a non-urgent request, I have some examples of how to frame it up. So as a registered vet tech myself, my recommendations for doctors and members of the medical team is to frame up the request without issuing demands or interrupting the workflow of a client area, because the client areas are important too. So be sure to acknowledge the context of what you're walking into if you walk up to the front desk. Validate your front desk for being busy and be a little empathetic. Respectful ways that we can frame these requests up, if it's an urgent request, would be, I hate to interrupt this interaction, but this one is time sensitive. Okay? Or if it's not urgent, when you have a minute, I need help with a client update. No rush unless you're able. I know you're busy up front. There's so many ways that you can say it respectfully, and it's all about communication, how you frame it up, and reading the room. Because I did a TikTok not long ago where I talked about reading the room, and I was referring to CSRs going into the treatment area. And I really got roasted because it felt like I was only being one-sided. And it is true. We don't need to normalize having somebody come up to the front desk and interrupting CSRs, because that's not helping anybody. So we want to make sure that our medical team is being respectful and that they have specific ways that they will come to the front desk and have an urgent request or a non-urgent request, and how to frame that up. Now, again, goes both ways. Yes, we have treatment room etiquette, and I have a whole lesson on reading the room when it comes to going into the treatment area. But the key here is there should be, in my opinion, a defined person, the designated go-to person. So if I'm at the front desk and I'm taking a call and I have a potential emergency or urgent care case, and I go through my sheet and I ask my questions and I've got my information and I put the client on hold, I go to the treatment area, I should have a person that I'm supposed to go to for that. And that person should be expecting it and should be welcoming it. Okay. Now, again, yes, I'm going to read the room, and I'm also going to be polite and respectful. When you have a second, I have an urgent case that needs a triage directive. Again, I have more on that, but right now we're going to focus on defining urgency at your hospital so that we can begin building your system. So what we're going to do is create a shared dictionary. So what we want to figure out is what is considered urgent and qualifies as what I consider a green light interruption. So this is going to be something where patient care suffers, a client's going to leave angry, we don't want to disrupt hospital flow, things like that. And that's what you guys need to figure out. What are the scenarios that would signal, yes, this is urgent and it needs an interruption? And we'll go to the protocol part for that next. But an example would be Dr. Sarah needs the history update on room 3 right now in order to start the exam. Right? So yes, if that's the case, then that's valid. The appointment's going to be stalled. We don't want to interrupt, hospital workflow. So that's going to require an urgent interruption. Now, what the protocol is going to be, we're going to define here in a second. Now, what about if it's non-urgent? If Dr. Sarah needs a client called back about tomorrow's drop-off time, that can wait, and we can determine whether it can be written on a dashboard or entered into your computer, whatever your protocol is going to be. Now, the red light things mean there's no need to interrupt anybody for anything here, but we have like maybe a refill request. It's a casual callback. Again, defining what your scenarios are for a green light interruption, a yellow light, it's non-urgent, but it's important. And then a red light, meaning this is something that we should have a system in place where we can fluidly go through our system without interrupting anybody at any time. Now let's lock in what our protocol is going to be depending on the scenario. What we're going to define here when I talk about these protocols is, for example, how is a doctor or a technician going to alert the CSR when they have something that needs immediate answers and it's urgent, it's a green light, like we need to interrupt them because we need to keep an appointment moving? No, we're not going to just shout over the counter or stand over the CSR who's typing. So what is the protocol going to be? We always want to have a designated anchor person. Who's your go-to person? And it goes both ways. So if I'm going to the front desk, then I feel like there should be a specific person that I would go to first. And usually you'll have a lead CSR. Maybe, for example, you have a specific area where somebody's answering phones, or, maybe that's your person. Whoever it is, like, you should have an order of events of who is your anchor person that you go to first. And then we're going to talk about how we can interrupt them. And sometimes if they're already on the phone, or they have a client that they're actively speaking to, maybe we can come up with a secret hand signal. So we have secret handshakes growing up as kids. Why not have a secret hand signal, or even a specific place where you might stand as a doctor that signals to them, stop what you're doing, I have an urgency. Okay. Now, if we're talking to a live client and we want to use a nonverbal cue, we can come up with either the place to stand, like I mentioned, a clinical query spot, or a polite hand gesture of some sort, something that is going to signal to them that this is my time to say something to my client. And I'm going to go through how you interrupt your client. But again, we want to make sure that we're being very respectful to each other. I have a time sensitive update for room 2 whenever you hit a stopping point, things like that. So this is the important part of developing your workflow is what is your protocol? Who do you go to? Who do you go to first? Who do you go to second? How do you do it? How do you frame it up? And same thing when a CSR has an emergency on the phone or a critical triage walk in, they need the exact same point of contact. Who is it going to be? And then we also have our protocol for our yellow lights and our red lights. So it might be logging it in. If it's just a refill request, where do you log that and how do you put that alert for somebody to take care of closing that loop? If it's a yellow light, then maybe you use your internal chat system. I don't care what it is, but you've got to figure out what protocol works for your practice and who's going to say what when. Now, I can't create all your protocols for you, but I can kick you in the butt and tell you that you need to get one done and what needs to be included and how to do that, which is what we've done today. But most importantly, remembering that we're one team, we all have one mission, and our patients and our clients do not see two different teams, okay? They only see care. So we need to succeed together or else we're going to struggle alone. So stop struggling and acting like there's nothing I can do, and let's work together. Now, another reminder, the front desk is not a servant station. It is the heartbeat. It is the first impression, the final experience. Respect travels both ways. And again, when you're under pressure and you're facing stress, it doesn't make it okay to be a jerk. Reminder, another one, veterinary nurses, veterinary assistants, CSRs, kennel attendants, cleaning people, I don't care what the role is, they are not your subordinates or of a lower rank. Okay. They have their own managers. They have an entirely different job and an entirely different skill set. And we are all colleagues. So let's all work together. Kumbaya. Now, I've got some talking points for you that I think that I'll put underneath of this video so that you can copy and paste these, because I feel like it might stimulate some of what needs to happen in order to work through your workflows and create your system that works. So thank you for listening. And please, if you're interested in joining the VetSnoot community, you can scan this QR code to get access to all the goodies within the community, invitations to different events that we do that will be similar to this one. And please comment with any questions and comments and whatever you have to say. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much.